I never imagined I'd see my mother-in-law in handcuffs. Not in my worst nightmares. Not in my wildest daydreams. Yet, there she was, walking past the glass window of the police station like she still owned the entire damn town. Chin high, spine straight, not 1 ounce of shame. And me? I just sat there staring, realizing that sometimes life doesn't just hand you justice, it drags it right into the room and forces it to look you in the eyes. If you had told me a year ago that Eleanor Whitmore, the queen of country club perfection, would end up on the wrong side of the law, I would have laughed, or cried, or both. Honestly, probably both. But here we are. And if you're wondering how things got this twisted, well, buckle up, because the story starts somewhere simple, somewhere small, somewhere you'd never expect darkness to grow. My name is Hannah Parker. I grew up in Dover, Kansas, a tiny town where everyone knows your name, your business, your cousin's business, and probably your blood type. The kind of place where nothing happens unless the cows escape or someone repaints their front porch. My life was quiet, predictable, and honestly a little boring, until the day Ryan Whitmore walked into the diner where I worked. He looked painfully out of place. Tailored gray suit, shiny shoes, a watch that cost more than my car. He was the kind of man you'd expect to see in a high-rise office, not sitting in a vinyl booth eating fries that tasted vaguely like regret. He ordered black coffee, spilled it on himself, apologized a dozen times, and somehow managed to make it charming. We talked, we laughed. He liked that I was real, whatever that meant to him. I liked that he didn't treat me like some small-town stereotype. When he left the diner, he placed his business card on the table with a tip and said, "If you're ever in Leawood, call me." Leawood, the wealthiest pocket of Kansas City. I didn't know it then, but my entire life was about to shift. 1 week later, we were texting constantly. A month later, we were dating long distance. A year later, I was standing outside the massive Whitmore home, palms sweating, trying not to breathe too loudly as I prepared to meet his parents. And let me tell you, meeting Eleanor Whitmore for the first time, that should have been the red flag I took seriously. Uneasy tension, a smile so sharp it could have cut glass. Perfect hair, perfect pearls, perfect manicure, and eyes that scanned me like I was a clearance rack dress someone brought to a gala by mistake. She said all the right words, but not one of them was sincere. She complimented my simple style. She said my hometown was quaint. She asked if my parents still worked with their hands, like manual labor was some sort of disease. But Charles, Ryan's father, he was different. Warm, gentle, the kind of man who didn't care whether you were born rich or grew up scraping by. He made me feel welcome. He told me he admired people like me, people who worked for everything they had. He joked that Eleanor would come around eventually. Spoiler, she didn't. Despite the tension, Ryan loved me deeply. He defended me when Eleanor made comments, reassured me that her approval didn't matter, and in my naivety, or maybe my hope, I believed him. So when he proposed, I said yes. I thought marriage might soften Eleanor. I thought love would be enough. And for a while, it kind of was, until everything changed again. A year into our marriage, Charles died suddenly. A heart issue, they said. It hit Ryan hard. I held him through the grief, through the questions, through the guilt. Eleanor barely cried. Instead, she immediately took control of the funeral, the estate, the narrative, everything. She played the grieving widow on the outside, but inside, something felt cold, too cold. 2 weeks after the funeral, she showed up on our doorstep with suitcases. Not 1, not 2, 4. She didn't ask, she announced. I can't stay in that big house alone. I'll stay here until I sort out Charles's affairs. Her house was a mansion. Our home was a starter house. But she moved in anyway, into the guest room, into our routines, into every crevice of our life. And that's when the real war started. She criticized everything I did. The way I folded laundry, wrong. The grocery store I shopped at, low quality. My cookware, cheap. My job, temporary. She'd walk into a room and instantly find something to insult. And Ryan would freeze, stuck between the woman he loved and the mother who controlled him. She loved making little comments designed to cut deep, but disguised as manners. Some women aren't meant to represent a family name. That dress is brave. We'll have to fix those habits before grandchildren come into the picture. I learned quickly, her smile was just a mask for cruelty. I clapped back when I could, nothing too explosive, just enough to let her know I wasn't her doormat, but she was relentless, and her favorite weapon? Doubt. She wanted Ryan to question if marrying me was a mistake. She wanted to remind me that she thought I was beneath the Whitmore name. Things escalated when she started bringing up other women Ryan should have married. At first, it was subtle, mentioning daughters of her friends, women from her charity groups, anyone who came from their world. But then she took it further, much further. Tense anticipation. One night, she planned a dinner. She insisted it was family only, which was already suspicious. We walked into the dining room, and that's when I saw her. Charlotte Pierce, blonde, perfect, polished, a woman who walked like she'd been raised on horseback and champagne. Sharp irritation. Eleanor introduced her with the enthusiasm of someone revealing a new heirloom. This is Charlotte Pierce. Her family built the Pierce Foundation. She and Ryan have so much in common. Ryan actually blushed. I saw it. And Eleanor saw me seeing it. Charlotte laughed at every one of Ryan's jokes. She touched his arm when she spoke. She used a nickname for him, Rye. Nobody calls him that. The whole dinner felt like an audition, and I wasn't the one they were rooting for. That night, I told Ryan, either you tell your mother to back off or we're done. He stared at me like he didn't recognize the woman standing in front of him, and he said nothing. Absolutely nothing. That silence told me more than any words could. Something was deeply wrong here, and the problem wasn't just Eleanor. It was the entire situation. Charles's death had always felt too sudden, too convenient. And now, with Eleanor moving in, trying to replace me, trying to control every inch of our lives, the timing gnawed at me. I started noticing things, little things, things that didn't make sense, like the fact that Eleanor kept Charles's pill organizer full, completely full. I picked up that pill organizer and felt my stomach twist. Every single dose was still there. But Eleanor had told everyone, the doctors, the family, the neighbors, that she managed his medication personally, that she took great care of him during his final weeks. So why were his pills untouched? Why did nothing add up? I started digging. Not dramatically, quietly, methodically. Women like Eleanor underestimate women like me, the small town girls, the ones they think are simple. But simple doesn't mean stupid. I checked the kitchen drawers, her purse, the mail she'd forgotten to hide. That's when I found it, a pharmacy receipt showing that Charles's heart medication hadn't been picked up in over a month. Tense realization. I called the pharmacy pretending to be Eleanor and asked about the refill. The pharmacist knew her instantly. Apparently, regulars like her didn't need verification. "Oh, Mrs. Whitmore said his new doctor stopped the medication," the woman said casually. "She told us not to fill it anymore." My heart dropped. Charles never switched doctors. He never stopped that medication. And Eleanor, she was the only one picking it up. I checked with Charles's real doctor, Dr. Hart. He confirmed there was no medication change, no reason to stop. In fact, Charles was improving. His health was stabilizing. According to his chart, he should have lived years longer if he took his medication. That's when the truth hit me like a freight train. Eleanor didn't poison him with some dramatic chemical. She did something so much worse. She let him die by simply not giving him the meds that kept him alive. I wanted to scream, to cry, to tell Ryan everything right then and there. But something held me back. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was knowing that if I confronted Eleanor unprepared, she'd twist it all around and make me look insane. So I kept digging. And what I found next tied everything together in the most horrifying way. Somber discovery. Charles had a tablet, old, with cracks on the screen, the kind that looks like it belonged to a dad who didn't care much for technology. Eleanor had left it behind, probably assuming I wouldn't know the password. But she underestimated me. The password was my birthday, the one Charles teased me about because I accidentally mixed up the numbers once during a board game night. On that tablet was a draft email addressed to a lawyer, unsent. In it, Charles explained that he wanted to update his will. He wrote that he was concerned about Eleanor's controlling behavior and wanted Ryan and me to have more decision-making power regarding the estate. He wrote that he didn't want Eleanor to take over everything if something happened to him. He never sent that email. He died 2 days later. When I put the pieces together, the medication, the will, the timing, there was no denying it anymore. Eleanor didn't just dislike me. She didn't just try to replace me. She eliminated the only person standing between her and complete control of the Whitmore family, her own husband. I knew I needed to confront her, but I also knew she'd deny everything unless there was undeniable proof. So I made copies of every document. I saved photos. I recorded conversations. I prepared myself like I was building a case, because honestly, I was. A week later, during another painfully elegant dinner with way too expensive wine, Eleanor made another dig about Charlotte. "Not everyone is cut out to marry into certain families," she said with a smile that could have cut steel. Ryan looked uncomfortable but said nothing. I stared at Eleanor and realized this woman thought she'd won. She thought she'd replaced me. She thought I was small. So I waited until Charlotte left, until the dishes were cleared, until the silence became thick enough to slice. And then I stood up, placed a file folder on the table, and said, We need to talk, all three of us. Ryan blinked at me, confused. Eleanor looked mildly annoyed, like I'd interrupted her nightly ritual of being judgmental. I opened the folder and spread the documents across the table. "Explain this," I said. Snowballing tension, eyes scanning the receipts, the doctor's notes, the refill history, the draft will. And for the first time since I'd met her, her face changed. Not much, but enough. A flicker of panic, a tightening of her jaw, a shadow in her usually unreadable eyes. "She tried to play it off. This is nonsense. You don't understand what you're looking at." I replied, "I understand enough. I understand you stopped his medication. I understand you lied to the pharmacy. I understand you kept him from seeing his doctor. And I understand he was rewriting his will to protect Ryan from you." Explosive tension. Ryan stood up so fast his chair scraped the floor. "Mom, is this true?" Eleanor's mask cracked. Just for a second. "Your father was weak," she snapped. "He needed structure. He was going to ruin everything with his foolish decisions." Ryan stepped back like she'd physically struck him. "You let him die." "I preserved this family," she screamed. The argument that followed was the ugliest thing I'd ever witnessed. Betrayal crashing into denial, grief smashing into rage. Ryan sobbed. Eleanor shouted. I stood there, heart pounding, realizing the man I loved had just learned that his mother wasn't just manipulative or controlling, she was lethal. After what felt like hours, Ryan walked away from the table, shaking. He didn't look at his mother. He didn't look at me. He just grabbed his phone and said, "I'm calling the police." Eleanor froze. "You wouldn't dare." Ryan didn't even hesitate. "You killed my father. You tried to destroy my marriage, and you're not taking anything else from me." The police arrived that night. They questioned us separately. They took the documents. They contacted the doctor and the pharmacy. Everything matched up. Everything pointed to Eleanor's deception, her lies, her control, her deliberate neglect. It wasn't dramatic like in the movies. It was cold, quiet, calculated, and deadly. Days passed. Then weeks. The investigation deepened. The insurance company froze the payouts. The estate lawyer halted all transfers. And eventually, after reviewing the medical records, the refill history, and the testimonies, they charged Eleanor with insurance fraud, medical neglect, and contributing to wrongful death. I'll never forget the day she was arrested. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She didn't even look ashamed. She just walked past me in that police station, chin high, like she still believed she was untouchable. But the truth finally touched her. Ryan and I spent months rebuilding from the mess she left behind. Therapy, conversations we should have had years earlier, hard truths, harder healing, but we made it, stronger, closer, quietly grateful that the truth finally tore down the monster hiding in pearls. I used to think I wasn't good enough for the Whitmore family, but now I see it clearly. I wasn't the one who didn't belong. It was her cruelty, her control, her greed. And in the end, she lost everything she tried so desperately to protect. So here's what I've learned. Sometimes the strongest thing a woman can do is pay attention. Notice the details. Trust her gut. And when the moment is right, turn the truth into her greatest weapon. And that's exactly what I did. I didn't destroy Eleanor. I didn't have to. I just revealed who she really was, and she destroyed herself. Stay with me. Your next story is already waiting. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share for more stories.